Over the time period, Application Manager is predominantly a monitoring tool, but recently we have developed recent management activities. So it works as a management tool as well as a monitoring tool. The agenda for today would be why database monitoring is required and what type of monitoring you can perform through MS SQL database monitoring, Oracle database monitoring along with its metric, and we can see what type of database reports you can generate through the products and how to create custom dashboards for certain SQL database servers. Why monitoring is required? If you ask a database administrator or a server administrator that what my server performance is about 100 milliseconds, he would say that the server is working perfectly fine. But if you ask the same question to a DBA, he would say that it should be around 10 or 15 milliseconds, and he will check why it is taking 100 milliseconds to respond. So this is how critical a database monitoring is. A database administrator must make sure that the DB is available 100%, as he will have users accessing that across the world 24/7. Analyzing root cause for certain important issues should be there so that he can eliminate some of the recurring issues which are commonly happening in the database. A database consists of log file and data files. So proper trend analysis of that should be there so that he will come to know how the resources are currently utilized, and he can also see how to plan the future upgrades. What to monitor in a database? If you ask me what kind of monitoring I should do in a database server, we have to check the availability of a database server, which is very important. Okay. Then response time of a database should be monitored. Free space utilization, total memory utilization of a database server should be monitored, and the user sessions should be monitored in a database server. So as a DBA, I need to make sure how many users are currently connected and what type of activity they are doing. That has to be monitored. In a database server, you might have a lot of instance which is currently running. So I need to see the memory usage of each and every instance and the list of scheduled jobs which are currently running in that instance. And I need to check whether there are blocking sessions which are available, or what is the wait time for each and every sessions. What is the current workload of an instance that has to be monitored? Individual databases would be available for each and every instance. So for that, status of the database, whether it is offline or online, what is the current backup status, how many backups are currently scheduled, and what is the restore status, how many restores are currently happening in the databases, the current data file and log file growth of each and every databases, that has to be monitored. Finally, the performance of the database, it entirely depends on queries, right? So a lot of users will access the database and execute certain DB queries. So which take, if the output of the queries are huge, it might take a lot of CPU and memory usage. So as a database administrator, I should constantly check what type of queries the users are executing and what is the CPU usage, total wait time, input output statistics. I need to monitor that consistently. There are a lot of tools available in the market which does the similar type of monitoring. For example, Perfmon, extended events, DMVs and system views, query store. Okay. The main disadvantages of this tool would be they might not work with all the versions of SQL servers. Again, if that works as well, it might not have the capacity to generate reports or create custom dashboards. Also, few database administrators would use custom script which they would execute on the database server for collecting some of the data. However, through Applications Manager, you can monitor these many type of databases out of the box, which includes RDBMS type of databases, big data type of databases, and we also support DB2 If you have an AS400 server and if you want to monitor that database, we can do that through Application Manager as well. Some of the database administrator will use custom queries to monitor some of the KPI metrics. So we have custom monitor, which is database query monitor, where if you already have the query which collects the data, you can add it through a database query monitor and see the output of that query, for which you can generate reports and you can also configure alert for that. Application Manager overall is an agentless monitoring tool, and we don't need an agent to be installed on a database server for collecting data. We use JDBC connection, that is a protocol, through which we check the availability and we collect the metrics for any database servers. So basically, there would be certain ports which has to be opened in the firewall. So by default, for MS SQL Monitor, it would be 1433, and for Oracle Database Monitor, it is 1521. So due to some security restrictions, your DBA might have configured a different port. Okay, you need to make sure that port is opened in the firewall so that application manager can communicate with the database and collect the data. There are certain user permissions which are required to collect the data for some of the databases. So we'll see what kind of data we can collect and what type of user permissions that are required for MS SQL and Oracle Monitor in detail. So in help.appmanager.com, you have an option like getting started. So here you can see prerequisites for application manager. So this document will contain complete prerequisite for all type of monitoring which we are currently support. So in database server, you can see MS SQL database servers. So in MS SQL database server, the user which you are using must have view server grant permission by default. And we have certain level of monitoring that has to be provided for the user. So for example, if you need SQL job monitoring that has to be done, the user must have this permission. And for SQL replication monitoring, you must have the user with this specific permission. So there are certain prerequisites that has to be performed at the user level to collect the data. And again, for Oracle Database Server, you have different user permissions. You can select Oracle Database Server over here, and the user with connect and select catalog roles are required for monitoring an Oracle database. So again, like MS SQL, we have certain performance metric that will get captured. For Oracle Alert Log metrics, you need to log in as this user and you need to execute these queries. So these tables will get created in the Oracle database and we can get the alert log metrics through application manager. And for redo log, similar kind of prerequisite, you have to log in with this user account and you must execute the below queries so that these tables will get created and we can able to collect the data. So these are the common prerequisites for monitoring Oracle and MS SQL. In case if you are looking for some other database, right, you can go to this help document and check the database servers which we support, and you can select the prerequisite and you can make sure that these prerequisites are completed in the remote SQL machine so that you can add the database in monitoring. So we'll see what type of monitoring we can do in MS SQL database server and what kind of key metrics that we collect in our monitoring tool. In application manager, all monitors and monitor groups will have two type of status. One is like health, another one is availability. So availability basically, which means like if the server is up or down. So if the server is down, we show that the monitor is down along with a down alert from the product. So whenever we are able to establish a JDBC connection with the remote SQL server, we show that the database is up. Health of the monitor, it is nothing but the dependent attributes for a server monitor or for a database monitor. So in a database monitor, you have a lot of metrics like a SQL job detail, backups, restore status, and individual database level status. So if any of this goes down or violates the threshold, we trigger the alert for health of the monitor. So there are three severities for health, which are critical, warning, and clear. So based on the threshold which you are setting for that monitor, you will receive the alert from the product. In the overview tab of MS SQL database, you will be able to see the list of databases which are currently created on a DB server or any specific instance. So in that database, you can see what is the current status of it, whether it is offline or online, what is the log percentage used, and what is the total size of the database. You can monitor that through the monitor page. And for individual databases, you can see the system tables. So if you want to know what kind of rows and what is the size of each and every rows which are present in the database, you can see that through our monitoring tool itself. Buffer management statistics can be monitored through the product. It is one of the important attributes which a database administrator must constantly monitor. So if this value goes low, this means users are querying new data most of the time. So if this output is huge, it will take a lot of CPU and memory to show the output for the users. So constantly have a check on buffer hit ratio, and you need to make sure that the data is not going below like 90 or 85 percentage. Added to that information, we also show page lookups per minute, page reads and writes per minute, total database pages, again page life expectancy. Those are some of the metrics which we show in buffer management statistics of MS SQL database. We show the connection statistics, which means the time taken for application manager to establish a JDBC connection with the remote machine. Along with that connection statistics, user will come to know how many users are currently connected with the database. So you might have certain restrictions in connecting with the users. So you can see whether what is the value of the user connection count. If it exceeds the threshold limit, you will get an alert from the product itself. Total logins per minute, logouts per minute can be monitored. Number of SQL batch requests received by that server can be monitored in the connection statistics page. Performance graphs for top executed queries, most frequently executed queries, most blocked queries can be monitored. So from the UI itself, you can see which queries are taking long time to execute, what is the slow running queries, most blocked queries in any specific databases that can be monitored in the performance metric tab of MS SQL Monitor. So this is one of the other data which we show, the top queries by CPU. So these queries are using a lot of CPU in the databases. We show what is the average CPU time taken and total CPU time in milliseconds, average execution time in milliseconds, along with the complete query details and in which database this query got executed, that will be shown in the product, and the last execution time. So you can also configure alerts from the product. So if the execution time or the average CPU time crosses the threshold, you will be receiving an alert from the product. Backup and restore monitoring is there. In case if you are scheduling certain backups in any of the database, you can see what is the DB name in which you have scheduled the backup, what is the start time and end time of the backup, total time taken to complete the backup. In case if there are any failures, any table failures got damaged, that will be shown in the backup detail, and total size of the backup, physical path and the name of the backup file, and you can see the backup age in hours. So you will be running backups every day for critical databases. So even 1 week or 1 month of backup, it won't be much useful for you because those databases will have backup scheduled every day. So you can see the backup age hours here. So if any of the backup file is if it is there for a long time, you can delete that from the directory. So this type of monitoring you can do. Restore data can be seen from which database you're actually performing the restore and from which user you're performing the restore, and what is the start time, restore from which folder, and the restore is happening to which folder. That will be shown in the product UI. So this is probably a kind of data you won't be able to set alert for this. So restore data can be seen from the MS SQL Monitor page. Replication is another important attribute. So for critical database servers, you need to make sure these databases are available 100%, right? So during that stage, you might have this replication server present in a different database. So you need to make sure that constantly if the primary database goes down, the secondary will start automatically. So there are a lot of agents involved in this replication status. So we show the individual agent details for the replication and what is the current status of the agent, whether it is offline or online, that will be shown. Log shipping status, you can see the database name from which the log is currently getting shipped and the agent type, what type of agent which does the process, the current status of the log shipping, whether it is successful or failed, time taken for this log shipping, and if there are any error messages, that will be shown as well. Again, in the replication status, as I said, you have different type of agents like transactional publication, snapshot publication, merge publication. You will be seeing what type of agents are currently there and what is the current status of that agent. In the replication agent data, you will see what type of agent does which type of operation in the database. So a log reader will sync a log file from one database to another database. So that type of data you can see, and the start time of that can be seen in the product UI, how much duration it took to complete the replication. That will be shown on the UI. And if there are any latency happening, you can also monitor that through the replication statistics. So session details is yet another important attribute. As a database administrator, he must know what kind of users are currently connected and from which host the connections are currently getting initiated. So in the host detail page, we show the total hosts which are currently in use, and in each host, how many connections are initiated, and what is the total memory usage of each and every connection, CPU time of it, and input-output operation that are happening in that connection that will be monitored. So individual user-wise session details will be shown. You can see the status of the user, whether it is active or is sleeping, and the username. SA is something like a database administrator user. Along with that, you can see other users who have access to the database and from which host they have initiated the session, and to which database they have connected, and through which program they have connected through the database, and memory usage and total CPU time used. That can be seen. And the best part is you can also kill a session from the monitor page itself. So when you click on kill over here, this session gets killed from the SQL database itself. So in SQL database monitoring, as we said before, we are moving into a management kind of tool. We also perform monitoring, and also we can manage your SQL database from the monitoring tool itself. So in the upcoming release, we are planning to have log file and data file monitoring for individual database along with the current status of it. So over this page, you will see the list of databases which are currently present in the database server, and data file and log file usage in MB, and what is the maximum size of it that you can see along with the total size. The current status of the database will be shown on the same page itself. You can create a report for this data, and you can share it with your management team to see what is the current utilization of the data file and log file. Again, user level details can be monitored in the MS SQL database. So we were showing session details and not the user level details. So here you can see the list of users which got created in the database, and what is the current status of the user, whether they are enabled or disabled, and the login type, whether SQL authentication or it is a Windows authentication, and the default database through which they have the permission, and the created time of the database. That can be seen here. The best part of it here is you can create user from this database monitor page itself. So creating this user will sync with the database itself. So whatever user you have created, it will get synced with the SQL database as well. And you might have a question like, why do we have configure alarm icon in the user detail page? So whenever a user is getting deleted or whenever a new user gets created, we will alert you, and you will come to know whether a user got deleted or created from the product. So that is why we have the configure alarm option. Similarly, you can generate a report for this user detail data as well. Configuration detail can be modified. There are certain configuration changes which has to be done in the SQL database. So these changes can be done for each and every database server from the product UI itself. Some of the configuration change might require a restart. So once you do it from the product UI, you will have the option where you can restart the SQL server so that changes will get implemented. Finally, the last enhancement, it would be on SQL job monitoring. So through Application Manager MS SQL Monitor, you can monitor SQL jobs, but in the recent build, we have done stepwise monitoring. In each and every jobs, you might have a lot of steps involved. So here we show each and every step and what is the failure message, why that got failed, and we can generate a report for last 24-hour failure of SQL jobs through the product UI itself. So this one we have recently implemented in the product. Now we'll see what type of monitoring we can perform in Oracle database server. The main metric that has to be monitored, it would be the log mode monitoring. So if the log mode monitoring is set to no archive log, in case if the database gets crashed, I won't be able to restore the point in time data. So log mode monitoring is required. I need to make sure that the log mode is set to archive log for critical databases, so that in case if that gets crashed, I can restore the data. Invalid or unusable index count must be monitored. So if this value is high, there is a lot of possibility like I need to re-index the databases. So re-indexing of databases, it will take a lot of CPU and memory usage. So I can avoid that by monitoring the invalid or unusable index count in Oracle database monitoring. And again, I can monitor database size and free space of the database in the overview section of Oracle database. System global area monitoring can be done. You can see buffer, data, dictionary, and library hit ratio, and along with the cache size of it, that will be shown in the monitor page. And tablespace statistics. In MS SQL database, you have a lot of database that can be created in a single instance. Similarly, in Oracle database, you will have a lot of table space that will be created. So in the table space details, you can see the name of the table space, and in the allocated bytes section, you can see what is the current usage and the free utilization. So this itself is a self-explanatory. So the red indicates that the percentage of used bytes, and the green indicates the free available bytes. So this can be available on individual percentage as well. And you can also see table space status. So what is the current status of the table space, whether it is offline or online, and how many data files are created for individual table spaces, what is the reads and writes happening per minute. And in the performance of data files, you can see the data file name, and for which table space the data file got created, and what is the current status of it. Here you can also see whether it is set to auto extend or it is not set to auto extend. That will be monitored, and reads and writes for individual data file will be monitored from the table space statistics itself. Like MS SQL database monitoring, you can see session details as well in Oracle database. So we show the individual sessions which are currently in use, and from which host the session got initiated, and what is the elapsed time for that session, CPU usage, memory sorts, and the list of table scans that can be monitored for individual sessions. So we have the buffer cache ratio over here as well. So this means if this value goes less than 90% or 80% for any user, so it is understood like that user is querying new data from the database every time. So as an administrator, I need to constantly monitor the buffer cache ratio. So if this value goes down, then the CPU and memory usage will go high, as the user is trying to fetch new data, and which might take a lot of CPU usage to show the output. So session detail for Oracle database can be monitored. So when we talk about session details, session summary that has to be shown in the UI as well. So you can see the list of sessions which got initiated from the host, from which host, how many sessions got initiated, and what is the program they have used to connect the session, and whether it is active or inactive, that can be shown. Session wait time can be seen. So you will get the ID along with the username and what type of event they are planning to do, and the wait time of it. So if the wait time is more than 1000 seconds, you can get an alert from the product itself. So seconds in wait is one of the attributes for which you can create an alert or configure threshold for that. Individual user voice details can be monitored. So in Oracle DB, you will have certain users with certain expiry date. So type of users along with the expiry date, the days to expiry, you can configure alert for days to expiry. So if this expiry date is close to 10 days or 5 days, App Manager will notify with an alert. And you can also see the account status, whether it is offline or online, that can be shown from the UI itself. And the user profile, whether it is a default profile or it's a different profile, that can be monitored as well. Scheduled job monitoring will be done. You can see the list of schedules which are currently created, and what is the current status of it, whether it is disabled or it is scheduled, the run status of it, whether it is successful or failed, and last run time of it, that will be shown in the product UI. For some scheduled jobs, you might have it set a run time, right? So it will be running every week. So you can see the next run date of that scheduled job as well. And in the scheduled job statistics, you can see the job name along with the failure count. If a specific job gets failed, you can see the failure count of it. And if there are any retries attempted for that specific job, you can see how much retry is attempted for that scheduled job, and whether it is enabled, that is true or false, that can be seen from the UI itself. Backup job monitoring can be done. You can see the list of backup jobs that are scheduled in the Oracle database. So from which backup type it is currently scheduled, last backup time of it, backup age in hours. Like MS SQL database, you can see the backup age in hours over here, and the current backup status, whether it is completed or failed, and how many minutes it took for the backup to get completed, and what is the size of the backup, that will be shown here. So in the recent backups, you can see the list of other recent backups that are available in the database itself. That will be shown in the UI as well. Log apply gap monitoring can be done. You can see the archive log destination status along with these details. So here we show the destination ID, the name of the log file, the current status, whether it is valid file or invalid file, the production mode of it, and the recovery mode of it can be seen. Similarly, in the statistics page, you can see the log sequence, timeout of that specific archive log, and what is the current sequence, whether it is archived sequence or applied sequence, if there are any delays or if there are any errors, that can be monitored as well. So Oracle error monitoring is available. As we saw in the earlier prerequisite section, if you can perform those prerequisite, you can also monitor the error log, Oracle error log that are occurring in the database. App Manager will alert you with the type of Oracle error along with the message which got generated during that specific time. So error log monitoring can be done in the database level itself. So we'll quickly log into the product UI to show this data. So in App Manager UI, when you go to Monitors tab, you can see the list of database servers that are currently supported. So when you click on MS SQL, you can see the MS SQL instance level details. So we talk about the individual database level monitoring. So over here, you can see the database details along with the log used in MB and the percentage of log. So if you just click on it, you can see the in-depth details of this particular database. So a user can click on System Tables to see the detailed table name along with the total number of rows and the total space used in MB that can be shown, and you can generate this as a CSV format. After that, you can see the performance metric data. So over here in the monitor page, when you click on performance, you can see the list of queries which are getting executed, the slow running queries, the top CPU used queries that can be generated. And in the filter option, you can apply filter. Like if I need to select any kind of custom data, I can able to generate a report for that as well. And the query details along with the database name and the most blocked queries that can be seen in the performance data as well. Now, when we talk about backup and restore, as we saw earlier, you can see the list of current backups which are scheduled in the database level and the backup age in hours. So in the backup and restore section, you can see that data. Replication data, you can see the current agents which are performing the replication and what is the status of it and what type of operation it does. That will be shown on the replication. And in individual session, in MS SQL, you can see what type of operation, what query they are executing in that session, and what is the login time of that specific session by that user that will be shown. So as we saw earlier, you can kill a specific session from the UI itself. And in Oracle database server monitoring, similar to that, you have the instance level monitoring where you can see the table space data. So list of table spaces which are currently available along with the used and free percentage, individual session details, so from which user the user has initiated the session and from which host the session got initiated, that can be seen. Rollback and corrupted blocks can be monitored. SGA monitoring is there, and you can also see alert log and redo log monitoring through the product itself. So individual Oracle process data can be monitored. If you want to monitor any specific process of Oracle database, and you can see that from the product UI itself. So we are monitoring everything, but how to set alert, how to create a threshold so that App Manager would trigger an alert for you. So in the threshold profile page, you can click on new threshold profile. And for sample, I can create a threshold for buffer hit ratio. And this ratio should be around like 90%. So I can set the value. If this value goes less than or equal to 90%, I need an alert to be triggered from the monitoring tool. So again, for warning, I can set it to less than 85 or 95, or for clear, I can set it to. So I can create a threshold like this, and I can go to admin section where I have the configure alarm option. From here, I can set different types of alerting. Like I can do it for individual monitor, and I can do it for monitor group, and I can use template which is readily available in the UI. So if I click on monitor type template, at a single shot, I can assign the same threshold for all the Oracle databases which I'm currently adding, which I've currently added in the product. So here I can click on buffer hit ratio, and now select the threshold which I've created. Click on override existing threshold configuration. So all the Oracle monitors which I've added previously will override the same threshold configuration. So in the configure actions at attribute level page, if there are any actions that are created, I can associate it to it. So the actions are like email action or SMS action. Any actions you can create through the product, I can associate it, and I can click on save. So right now I have associated a threshold and action for buffer hit ratio. So if this value goes less than 90%, I will be notified with an alert from the product. So this is how you can create threshold, and you can apply it to all the database servers. So let's see some of the business critical report that can be generated from the product UI. And you can also, we'll also show you how to create custom dashboards for database servers in detail. Reports can be classified as trend analysis report, forecast report, or you can also generate some of the report for custom attributes. So trend analysis, something like you must have an history data, how the log file or data file usage was there in previous month, and how the current trend is currently going on for that specific attribute. That can be seen in trend analysis. So forecast report, as we saw earlier, data file and log file are some of the important metric that has to be monitored consistently. So this forecast report shows how the data file and log file grows over a period of time. So I can see what is the last week forecast of this log file, and what is the current day utilization, and how this log file grows in future, that is over 1 month or 2 months period. I can see that data. And individual monitor type reports can be generated, and you can see any data for any performance metric which is collected in any database server through the product itself. So we'll go by trend analysis first. In trend analysis, we show the history report, hour of day report, day of week report, statistical report, heat chart reports can be generated. In forecast report, you can see what is the current utilization of the log file or data file, and how it would grow in future. That can be seen in the forecast report page. We also have the option of view and compare reports. So whenever you are generating a report for buffer hit ratio or connection time for any databases, so you can compare each and every database's connection time, so that you will come to know which database takes long time, or which database has less buffer hit ratio, and which database is running optimum in performance. That can be seen from the reporting section. We'll log into the product UI, so that you will come to know what kind of report and how to generate it. So we have a separate report section from where you can generate these reports. For individual monitor types, for servers, application, database, we have separate modules available. Let's go to database server, where you can generate availability of databases. So in case if you want to see the current availability of database server, so through this report you can generate it, so that you will come to know which database is available 100% and which has less uptime. So I can select a time period. So I can, if I want to see a last 30-day report or last quarter report, I can generate from the product UI. And this you can either download in the form of PDF or CSV, or you can also mail this report from the product itself. So if your management team is asking any kind of performance report or availability or a downtime report for database service, you can simply generate this report and send it across to them. And we saw about the trend analysis. So here you have different database reports available. So I have to select for MS SQL or Oracle for generating a report for that database. Okay, so here we can see log requests per minute. For individual database, this is how the trend will go. So here I can see the date and time, what is the minimum and maximum value occurred for that specific time. I can generate hour of day report, which shows the hour period of a specific date, and the day of week report can be seen, the list of days per week along with the minimum and maximum. So in that we'll give a note on which specific date the value was high and in which specific day the value went low. That can be seen in the summary as well. And the statistical report will, which have the 95th percentile and some standard deviation, will be there when you generate this report. And heat chart reports can be seen for these metrics. So this is trend analysis report, which you can generate from the product. And again, we discussed about forecast report. So forecast report is available for server monitoring for disk usage, and in case of MS SQL, it is available for data file size monitoring. So I can see the top 10 databases along with the current usage, and what is the usage last week, and this day, current day usage of this data file, and how this data file will grow in future. I can see that data, and I can predict this data for 6 months of time period. So this I can do from the product UI, and I can generate this report from the CSV format as well. So this report can help you in predicting how the trend is going, and based on that you can request for additional memory or additional disk space for your servers, so that this data file, when it grows, the space is already available and it won't create any performance issues for you. And all the reports can be generated in a scheduled format. You can create scheduled reports from the product UI. So we have forecast reports and capacity planning reports that can be scheduled as well. So I have to mention a scheduled name like database server, and the status, I need to make sure it is already enabled. And in the description field, you can mention any type of descriptions like the current day report or last 7 days downtime report. Likewise, you can enter any description, and you can select it. It is going to be a monitor type based report or individual monitor report that you can select, and I can do it for any type of database. So over this page, you will have the option of selecting a time period, whether this has to be generated in a daily format or weekly format or in a monthly format. As a database administrator, before I come to the shift, I need to make sure the current availability trend of my database. So I need to get a complete downtime history of which database went offline and which are currently online. So I can do it in a daily basis, and I will be able to select a scheduled time for this. And this report can be sent in the form of CSV or PDF, or in case if there are any firewall block when sending an email, you can send it as a link as well. So I will get a link along with this data. So I can generate this to see what is the current availability of my database servers. So this is available in the product. So finally, the last topic for today's webinar would be creating custom dashboards. So in Application Manager, you have the option of creating multiple dashboards from the product, and you can publish this dashboard so that if you have a NOC environment, you can publish it in a wider screen so that your administrator team or the database administrators will come to know the recent alert which got generated and what is the current critical metric that are getting monitored from the product. From the product UI, when you go to home section, you will be seeing the list of dashboards that can be created. From the actions tab, you can create any specific widgets. So these widgets can be any performance metric widget, or it can be a tabular data widget, or you can see last alarm status, availability and health status of multiple monitors. It can be database monitors, server monitor, application servers, anything you can see in this data, and you can create a widget for this. So this is one dashboard which we have already created. So where you can see the recent alarm status which are currently occurred in an application manager, and the tabular data of any specific important metric that you can see. And the performance metric report includes a graphical representation. What is the current trend of this buffer rate ratio? I can see it in a graph, and the current alarm history and the availability and health of monitors and monitor groups. I can see it in the dashboard. Over here, I have the option of publishing this dashboard. So in case if you are using any third-party tool, so probably you can copy this iframe and have that pasted in that tool, so that whenever you want to refresh this page, you can do it through that tool. Or if you have been writing any custom script, you can copy this iframe and you can paste it over the script. So that script refreshes every time, and this dashboard will get refreshed as well. Added to it, we also have an option to publish this complete view. So when you click on this print friendly icon, so this dashboards open up, and this gets readily refreshed based on the refresh time, page refresh time, which you will be setting up in the product. So this can be placed over a large screen. So every 5 minutes, you will be seeing the current trend of what is exactly monitored from the product. So if you want to set the refresh time interval, from the user icon, click on personalize. And from here in the web client, I can set the auto refresh time interval. So it will be in minutes. So the least interval would be 1 minute. So every minute, this dashboard gets refreshed and new data will pop up. So let's quickly recap on what we saw in today's webinar. It would be on database monitoring, what type of database metrics you can monitor through application manager, and how important is some of the metrics that can be monitored in MS SQL and Oracle databases, and how to perform certain troubleshooting for some of the important metrics that are getting monitored in MS SQL and Oracle databases, and how to create custom report and custom dashboard from the product UI. So hope you have a lot of questions during this sort of webinar, and I have my colleague who answered you in the questions panel. So he will help you in answering some of the questions which got raised during the course of this season. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar and listening this webinar patiently. So if you need any personalized demo, or if you need to show a POC on the product, you can comment that in the chat section, so that our support team will make a note of that and will contact you after the webinar season. Thank you everyone for joining. Wish you a wonderful day.